Not every family that welcomes you with love does so with pure intentions. Sometimes the love is just a mask hiding something far more darker. Stay with me till the end and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss stories like this, as I tell the story of how I was married into a family that seemed to love me. The first time I met the Eze family, I felt like I had stepped into a Nollywood film. The colors, the noise, the sheer exuberance of it all, it was overwhelming in the most beautiful way. My husband, Chike, had warned me that they were a handful, but he hadn't prepared me for the love and laughter that filled their home in Enugu. His mother, Mama Ngozi, a woman with a smile as wide as the river Niger, welcomed me with a hug that smelled of palm oil and foam. His father, Papa Obinna, was a man of few words, but his eyes held a warmth that spoke volumes. As for me, I was a Lagos girl, used to the city's hustle, but in their compound, I felt a peace I had never known. We married a year later, and I moved in with them, a traditional arrangement that felt right. The first few months were a whirlwind of adjusting. I learned to pound fufu without getting my knuckles bruised, and to haggle at the local market with the best of the market women. I was part of their family, or so I thought. The first crack in their perfect facade appeared during a late-night phone call. Chike, my husband, was away on a business trip, and I woke to hushed voices from the bedroom of my parents-in-laws. Mama Ngozi and Papa Obinna were talking in a rapid-fire Igbo language, a language I was still learning, but the tone was unmistakably fear. I heard the word Okocha repeated several times and police. My heart pounded. When they saw me, their conversation stopped dead. Papa Obinna cleared his throat and told me to go back to the bed. He said, "Nothing, my daughter, just a small business problem." But his eyes were full of a weary sadness. I noticed him glance at a small ornate calabash tucked away in a corner of the room, a piece I had always been told not to touch. Over the next few months, the small cracks became gaping holes. They were unexplained trips to remote villages, whispered arguments that ended abruptly when I entered into the room, and an unnerving tenseness that hung in the air like a harmattan dust. I started to piece things together, small details I had initially dismissed as quirky family traditions. They insisted on me wearing a certain jewelry, particularly an old silver anklet I couldn't remove. They performed strange rituals over my food before serving it to me, muttering incantations I didn't understand. The most unsettling thing was the way they spoke about Okocha. It wasn't a name, but a title, a name they reserved for a powerful figure, a shadow that loomed over their lives. I had always assumed it was the name of a business associate, maybe a man they were afraid of. One evening, I was alone in the study, tidying up. Chike's father's office was a sacred space, and I was honored to be entrusted with it. Then I found an old photo album tucked away in a cupboard. It was full of pictures of Chike and his siblings as children, their faces bright with innocence. But at the very back, I found a few photos that didn't belong. They were grainy and dark, but I couldn't make out a group of men, including Papa Obinna, standing around a large open pit. The men were smiling, some holding machetes. The pit was filled with what looked like bones. My blood ran cold. The caption on the back of one photo was a single chilling word, Okocha. But it wasn't just a word, it was an explanation. Below it, in faded script, was a chilling note, which wrote, "The first harvest, the first wife." My mind reeled. I went out and confronted Mama Ngozi, my mother-in-law, my voice trembling. She looked at the photos and the colors drained from her face. She sat me down, her hands shaking as she held mine. She said, "My daughter." Her voice was barely a whisper. She continued. She said, "Our family is built on a secret." She told me a story of her youth, of a time when Papa Bina and his brothers were young men, desperate for wealth. They had stumbled upon a juju man, a powerful fetish priest who promised them untold riches. The ritual, however, required a sacrifice, not an animal, but a human being, a human. Not just any human, but a person of the family's choosing. One who would willingly enter into their lives, their fold, their trust. A person who would be honored, who would be loved and then given up to the spirits. This person was the Okocha. The bones in the photos were the remains of their first sacrifice. A young woman Papa Bina's father had married for the sole purpose of the ritual. It was an evil that had followed them ever since, demanding a new Okocha for each new generation of wealth they wanted to reap. Mama Ngozi had been the first real wife, the one who survived because she had been born into the family and also married to Papa Bina by arrangement. The whispered phone calls, the trips to the remote villages, it was all to perpetuate this heinous cycle, to keep the spirits appeased. Then her eyes locked onto mine, and the truth hit me with the force of a thunderclap. She said, "Our last Okocha was a distant cousin, but the spirits refused her. We have been waiting. We have been praying for a new sign. When Chike brought you home, my child, we knew the spirits had answered. You have been chosen." "I have been what?" "Excuse." My words shattered. My beautiful, loving family, the one who had welcomed me with their open arms, were monsters. The wealth, the laughter, the life I had come to love was built on the blood of innocent people. The jewelry they made me wear, the rituals over my food, it was all a part of the preparation. I was the new Okocha. The fear that had been a dull ache for months suddenly became a searing inferno. They weren't just hiding a dirty secret. They were planning my murder. Then I asked her, I had to know, does Chike, my husband, know? Does he know about all this? I asked with my voice, a broken whisper. Mama Ngozi's eyes were filled with a terrible sorrow. And she replied, He knows. He knows, my daughter. It is the family's burden. It is our own cause. But he loves you. But the spirit demands a price. He loves me. I didn't wait for him to come home, my heart hammering against my ribs. I grabbed a small bag, stuffing a few essentials inside. I had to get out, right now. As I fumbled with the latch on the front door, I heard footsteps behind me. Mama Ngozi stood in the hallway, her face a mask of grief. She said, "You cannot escape. The spirits are watching." Well, I didn't answer. I sprinted out the door and into the darkness. The sounds of the compound, the crickets chirping, a generator humming, they all suddenly sounded like the footsteps of my pursuers. I ran, a mad woman, towards the main road, the silver anklet chafing against my ankle like a chain. It wasn't a sad walk away, but a frantic, desperate escape. I left behind the perfect facade, the loving family, and the man I had married. The man I thought I had married and who loved me. Why? Because some secrets are too dirty to be forgiven. And some families, they are too evil to be saved. What would you do if you married into a family that seemed perfect, only to find out their wealth depended on your blood? Thank you for coming to the end of this story. Remember to subscribe for more emotional and dramatic stories as this.